Hi, this is Morgan Smith, financial advisor and partner with WorthPoint. And today I'm here with our special guest, Apollo Lupesco, PhD, Vice President at Dimensional Fund Advisors and the Secretary of Explaining. Apollo, how you doing today?
Good to see you, Morgan. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, it's been really great going through these videos with you. We're on myth number 10, and we're going to wrap this up. As I said, we've had a 1,000% batting average. We'll see how well we do today. Um, Today's myth is it's different this time. And this is very, very interesting myth. I think I hear this, quite frankly, from people all the time. And it's like, hey, Morgan, what do we do? Things are different. I know, this has been a fundamental paradigm shift with, fill in the blank,
Right.
whether it be computer systems or a pandemic or the banking system or AI. And, you know, my response, my philosophy on this, my mindset on this is something I apply everything in life, whether it be investing or my experiences and my development as a person, is it's the yin and yang. Guess what? It's exactly the same, but it's completely different.
Right.
And that is the dichotomy of things that occur in an investment standpoint when people come with this mindset. It's hey, it's different this time. It's well, yeah, it's different, but it's exactly the same. Let's look at the data.
Yeah. And and you're absolutely right. I mean, that is the fundamental tension here, and in a way, like in terms of a myth, maybe it's half a myth in a way, because as you said, it is different this time, but yet it's not different this time. And how do you reconcile? How do you think about that? Because it seems like these two statements are in conflict with each other. And I actually thought about this for a while, Morgan, is how do you reconcile exactly those two statements that you put out? And it wasn't until until a couple of years ago when I started to get some at least some clarity in my mind of how to reconcile the two. And it started with playing chess. In the pandemic, like some of us, we picked up a phone, and the next thing you know, here's chess.com on our phone, and I started playing chess. And as I started playing chess, there's this really interesting realization, is that as I played a number of games, and I'm not a good player, but I like to dabble in there. As I played a number of games, one of the things that I realized is that every single game that I play ends up in a different position. I never played a game where I end up in exactly the same position as in any previous one. It's always different. It is always different. It always end up in a different position. I'm not sure if you play chess or folks on watching this play chess, but I can tell you that even as I ask folks, hey, do you play chess where you end up in exactly the same position? No, there's always something different, slightly different or very different. So it kind of got me thinking, well, in chess, every single game ends up in a different situation. Like we might be today in this different set of circumstances of June 2023. Now, the question is in chess, there is a fundamental premise that stays the same, that doesn't change. And that is the fact that we have a chessboard with 64 squares. You have the same pieces. And in that respect, even as each individual game ends up in a different position, there's a fundamental premise that stays the same. And that's kind of what I thought. Okay, I understand that's what in chess, but what is the chessboard of investing when it comes to our money? So what's the fundamental premise that stays the same in investing, even as this particular set of circumstances might be different than anything else that we've seen. And what it occurred to me is that the fundamental premise that really stays the same is that we are buying ownership in companies, and these companies that we invest in, they operate in free markets in a capitalist world. And these companies in which we buy ownership, they will find a way to make it work irrespective of the state of the world. You look at the pandemic. And you have all these companies that have figured it out. Okay, so if we cannot work in the office, we'll make it work from home. We'll use Zoom. If we cannot, if I cannot rent vacation homes, well, I'm going to rent work remotely. So they found a way to make it work. And I think that's a fundamental premise of a free capitalist society, free market capitalist society, is that the ability of the companies to figure it out in a free market and pursue their economic interests. And the pandemic was a good example of this. But I also thought, when you look at data, what's another period that really terrible situation where you can see how the market responded? And to me, that was not my time, but my parents' generation, talking to my mom about World War II. And World War II was an incredibly devastating time in our history. There's no doubt about it, because it's not like war is good for business. Forget about it. You have millions and tens of millions of people dying. You had cities completely being destroyed. You have no consumer base. Everybody's in the military. And it was just a terrible time in our lifetime. And I was curious to see, how did the market react during this absolutely terrible time in our history. So if you go back to 1939, when Germany invades Poland, war starts in September. And then you go to 1945, when Japan surrendered in August, and the war was over. And you have this 6-year time period. The question is, how did the stock market do? How would you have fared as an investor in this terrible time? And what was amazing to see is that a dollar invested at the beginning of the war, by the end of the war, 6 years later, so in 6 years, that dollar would have pretty much doubled, in 6 years during the worst period of my parents' generation. So it was an incredible thing to see that these companies and the markets were so resilient during such a terrible time. And we all know that we got attacked at Pearl Harbor in December of 41. And now if you look at the years when the US was directly involved, 42, 43, 44, 45, in every single one of those years, the market goes up, and goes up remarkably. The long-term average annualized return, it's about 10%. Look, these are incredible returns during one of the worst times in our history. So the question is, why, and what is the story there? Because if you talk about being different, that was different. That was different. I can't even imagine how it must have been, with neighbors dying, and again, look around the world, cities being destroyed and everything going on. But why is it that we saw this resilience in the market? What causes? What's the source of this resilience? So it got me thinking that companies will try to find a way to make money in whatever conditions we might be in. And back in those days, let's take manufacturing, it was a big deal. And you have these car companies. And back in those days, not much demand on the consumer side. But what these companies did is they pivoted. And instead of putting Cadillacs, the engines into cars, they actually put them into tanks. And he had, Cadillac tanks, and they were selling them to the government. When I heard "Build for Tough," I thought that was like, wow, that's a pretty clever, logo or statement for them. But it turns out it goes back to World War II. The toughest Fords ever built were not cars, they were tanks, and they were selling them to the government. And they're also making airplanes and selling those to the government. So to me, what's interesting, is that Morgan, is that the resilience comes from the fact that companies adapt. That you have all these CEOs, you have all these smart people showing up for work, and their main goal is, how do we keep this company feasible? How do we keep this going? And they'll find a way to make it work. And that, to me, is the fundamental chessboard of investing that has not changed. Companies will try to find a way to make money in whatever state of the world we might be, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's World War II, whatever the case might be. And it's not going to work out every time. But by and large, if you buy enough companies, not just in the US, but around the world, then you certainly have a better chance to really withstand whatever different situation you might find yourself into at any moment in time. But that, to me, that's kind of how I think about it. Is it different this time? Yes, it is different. And I'm not going to sugarcoat, it is different. A war in Ukraine, and inflation, and the Fed raising rates, and a pandemic that we just got over, that is certainly unique in our lifetime. At the same time, there's a fundamental premise that has not changed, and that is that we are buying ownership into companies that operate in a capitalist free market society. And that is what really gives me the optimism for the future going forward.
Well, I love hearing this because it is kind of emphasizing and providing support for what I tell my clients and my perspective as well, my personal perspective as a person and as an investor. When you think about it, the world, humanity, our ecosystem, it's it's supremely robust through evolution and mutations. Um, Organisms are continually changing to changes in the environment. And if you think about it, the investment stock markets are, in my opinion, the most robust and resilient man made ecosystem, if you will. And in essence, the markets are just a reflection of the human ecosystem. And the human ecosystem, uh, well, you've got participants out there in capitalism, entrepreneurs, always looking for opportunities, and they're very resilient. And so, my message to clients is, um, if you feel it's different this time, remember the the constant is there's plenty of really bright, energetic entrepreneurs out there looking for new opportunities, and unless there's Armageddon,
Right.
I don't think that behavior is going to stop, and that keeps my faith in capitalism and the markets moving forward. Any final thoughts on that?
I mean, listen, yeah, yeah, I completely agree. You mentioned Armageddon. I mean, if we do, knock on wood, ever get there, um, I think we're going to have bigger problems in our investment
Exactly.
portfolio.
Yes.
But listen, we've been through a lot of things through the years. The world has been through a lot of things, and I do think that exactly what you said is just it's people being resilient leads to companies being resilient, ultimately leading to the markets being resilient. So what you said is absolutely true.
Well, we're wrapping it up here, and my goodness, I wish my baseball team was batting as good as you have, Apollo. Myth number 10 here. It's different this time. Well, you know what? Maybe this is kind of a 50-50.
I
We'll
know.
take it.
We'll
Let,
take it.
us say we're batting 1,000. So, look at. I think the message here is really best we could say is it's the yin and yang. It's yes, it's different, um, but it's actually quite the same. And so, on that note, Apollo Lupesco, we're going to wrap this up. I really appreciate your time over the course of this series. Big value to me having you on board. Thanks for taking the time. And I think our listeners are going to really learn a lot and hopefully make them think twice about things. And I think the theme of this whole series is something that you spoke about in this video was disentangling your emotions and actually looking at the data. And that's what we try to do as financial advisors. So, to the Secretary of Explaining, I'm going to say thank you, sir. Very much appreciate your time. You take care. Any final notes or comments?
It's been great fun talking to you. Thank you for having us, and thanks to everybody for watching.
All right, Apollo. Again, my name is Morgan Smith. I'm a partner and financial advisor at WorthPoint. We can be found at worthpointinvest.com. Hope you enjoyed the series. Take care and have a great day.